The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up the mountain alone to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. And meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once, Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." So Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and he began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus stretched out a hand and caught Peter. After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear that particular Mass played, I always want to hear what the categories are. It sounds to me just like the theme from Jeopardy! And I guess I'm betraying my own stupidity that I would know something like that. Beats a lot of other stuff. Each week, we come together in this room, and we gather here for a multitude of reasons. But at the very bottom, at the very base of all those reasons, we come here looking for God. We gather so that we might find the holy in the midst of the ordinary and the commonplace. We come here in the hope that signs and symbols will lead us beyond the mundane, will take us beyond the everyday, so that we can find the reality that is God. For Elijah, Paul, and Peter, just as you heard, the quest was the same. Elijah climbed Horeb like Moses before him to find God, because in that place, God had become present to Moses in the wind and the earthquake. And then God gave the commandments. But this time, God was not in the wind and the earthquake. On another occasion, Moses found God in a burning bush. But this time, God did not come in fire. Finally, Elijah hears a tiny whispering sound. He covers his face. Elijah found the Lord in the almost inaudible murmur of a gentle breeze. And Paul was so sure that he could lead his fellow Jews to God. He knew that he could show them the presence of God. He reminds them of all that God had done in their history, the covenants, the laws, the prophets. But like us, they too were unwilling to be surprised by God. They refused to be changed. And so they missed God. Again, look at Peter, impetuous, always ready to run. If it's really you, tell me to come. He sets out, but the surprise is too much. He can't make it. God has a habit of breaking into our lives and surprising us. Our problem is to accept that surprise and to find God. But where do we begin? Who is God? God speaks to Elijah in a gentle breeze, certainly not an image of power. For us, it can be a reminder that God speaks to the heart in silence, in the murmured words of prayer, in the touch of the sacrament, and the hands of a healer. What is a breeze? What is a piece of bread, or a sip of wine, or a spoken word? For a brief moment, these are all bearers of God. God speaks in Jesus. It is I. Do not be afraid. And that's the whole message of redemption. If you want a quick summary of what Jesus did, all you need remember, it is I. Do not be afraid. Jesus' hand held out to Peter is like the hand of God, stretched out to Adam, giving life. Elijah was convinced that he knew where God was. So were Paul and Peter. They were all surprised. You and I, we know God. Or do we?